Thank you for joining us on Finding God in the World of Video Games, a place where we celebrate our favorite games, characters, and our favorite gaming stories while uncovering biblical insight and spiritual truth along the way. Today we're diving into Sony's State of Play announcements a few weeks before E3, and we're getting an early peek at what Sony has in store for us.
Now, this is the second time Sony has done a State of Play broadcast. And in this brief but very impactful 10-minute presentation, we got a huge glimpse of what PlayStation has in store for us in the future. First, we have the highly anticipated expansion to the critically and commercially successful Monster Hunter world, ICEBORNE, coming out this September. This one will add a whole lot of new monsters, new story content, some more new monsters, new armor, and if I didn't mention it already, new monsters.
ICEBORNE does look really amazing, but I wouldn't expect any less. Honestly, with last year's huge hit at Monster Hunter World, it's kind of building off an excellent foundation that already exists. Conversely, I'm looking at this Predator Hunting Grounds game, which they didn't show a whole lot. What they did show looked very interesting to me. This is the latest title from IllFonic, which is a studio previously did Friday the 13th, another asymmetrical survival horror style game. Looks like they're taking a page from their previous release, Evolve, and Dead by Daylight. I'm hoping that they're going to be able to nail the formula. I wasn't terribly impressed with only seeing a little bit of full motion video on this one.
Yeah, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm super excited about Predator. Love the movies. Really excited for this game, like I already said. But I was really disappointed that all we saw was somebody holding a gun in the woods and some type of invisible enemy just standing there waiting for them. I personally would have liked a little more time with Predator and a little less time with Medieval, since it really just looked like another basic hack and slash to me.
Well, Medieval was a basic hack and slash back when it originally came out on the PlayStation 1. This classic game is going to be remade and remastered coming out in October. Fresh new coat of paint on these old bones. We'll see if they can do anything exciting enough to give it a chance to live in this new generation. For those of you that maybe didn't play it in its original form, this is kind of a Tim Burton-esque Corpse Bride style hack and slash adventure. I don't know if it's going to have an opportunity to live in this current day and age of what we expect from other larger hack and slash titles. We'll see if it can hit the mainstream. I'll tell you what, I'm not sure we'll hit the mainstream, but at least it was the freshest idea I saw coming out of State of Play. And this is a game that looks like it fell right out of Animal Planet Away.
This Away game actually really caught my eye. From what we saw, you're going to be dealing with a lot of environmental dangers, fierce predators, and your own pressing need to find food and shelter. If they can successfully pull this off, then this could be a unique take on the survival genre.
And it could be, but I'll be honest with you here. I feel like this is Ark, except we just reskinned it with some kind of running raccoon thing instead of...
It's a flying squirrel, not a raccoon, but I get where you're
coming
from.
If I wanted to be some kind of raccoon, I'd like to be Rocket Raccoon. But other than that, I'm pretty good on the whole idea of being different rodents. But I will tell you what I was really excited about, and I would hope that this is a title that is near and dear to most gamers' hearts. Definitely got a huge place in my heart. This is the Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Do you have a little bit of a confession to make? I have never played the original Final Fantasy VII, but I have watched Final Fantasy VII Advent Children like a million times, and I absolutely love that movie.
I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. This is unacceptable.
The movie was great, though.
we're gonna have to fix this at some point in the near future. Unfortunately, you'll have an opportunity to with the remake of Final Fantasy VII. For those that are also unaware, unfortunately, of the greatness of this game, Cloud and Sephiroth are veritable gaming icons who engage in a deeply personal quest to save or destroy the world, depending on their point of view. It's full of excellent supporting characters who rise and fall to support Cloud's quest to not only preserve his planet, but also to find and save himself in the process. And if you're looking for epic gaming moments, this one is packed with them. I'm going to warn you right now, some really dated spoilers are ahead. This is a spoiler alert of all spoiler alerts, but honestly, if this is a spoiler for you, I don't even know what you've been doing with your life. I'm not entirely sure you should even be listening to this right now. Ask any gamer who had the opportunity to play through this title without the benefit of spoilers, and they will tell you that the moment that Aerith is cruelly and unexpectedly dispatched by Sephiroth will never be forgotten. I don't know that there's probably a lot of gamers that have never gotten over that. Personally, I always thought that Cloud belonged with Tifa, but no matter what side of that fence you're on, it's always hard to watch that fateful moment without gasping and maybe, just maybe, needing to grab a Kleenex. Now let's get back to Sony for a second. I will confess myself that I had a small amount of disappointment with their very brief presentation this week. Don't get me wrong, I plan to be there for each and every episodic release of Final Fantasy VII whenever that finally happens. And while nobody was really asking for a Medieval remake, it's kind of nice to see that Sir Dan will get another chance in this realm as well. Even the Monster Hunter content, which was fairly predictable, was welcome and it looks pretty exciting. Now, my disappointment doesn't really come from what was announced, but rather what wasn't announced. No real fresh intellectual property, no truly new ideas, just going back to the well and either remaking an old idea, like Medieval, remastering a great idea, Final Fantasy VII, expanding on an excellent idea like Monster Hunter World, or basically performing a palette swap on an existing idea like Predator. There simply wasn't that much fresh to be found. And no, the more I think about it, I'm not really feeling away.
Hey, watch it. Away actually looks really interesting to
It's
me.
a raccoon. You're a raccoon.
It's a flying squirrel!
The problem lies in the gaming industry itself. It's just not a very safe place to trot out new and expensive ideas. Just ask Vampire, We Happy Few, Anthem earlier this year, or even the newly released Days Gone, all of which struggled to find their footing in a gaming landscape that practically screams for new, fresh ideas, but only tends to financially reward a tried and true roster of sequels and remakes and remasters that involve less creativity but also substantially less risk. We claim to want gaming developers to try their hand at something that we haven't seen before, but honestly, very few of those ideas are met with that rarefied air of success, beyond our appreciation. And unfortunately, applause does not pay the bills, although it can turn the lights off for you. Cue the clap-on product placement here. They're not advertising with us? Oh, we don't have any advertising. Oh, never mind. Then we'll just keep going. So the truth is, we are typically just more comfortable with the familiar because it delivers something predictable, something safe. Lower risk, but also lower reward. And in our relationship with God, this tendency can also rear its ugly head. We want the dreams that He has placed in our hearts to come to pass, but we tend to want them housed in our comfortable, predetermined concepts of how He is supposed to do things. We want His answers to prayer, but without any meaningful disruption to our lives. We seek neat, tidy, clean solutions to life's often messy, dirty, complicated problems. In the book of John, we find one such circumstance, when Jesus raised his friend Lazarus back to life. Now, many of us may be familiar with the story, or at least the name Lazarus, because it's pretty uncommon. But I find the prologue of this resurrection is more interesting than the actual display of supernatural power itself. We start with Jesus receiving a message from Mary and Martha, the two sisters of Lazarus, informing Jesus that Lazarus is sick. And in the days before cell phones, there was no option for a read receipt on their text message, so they had to offer this prayer request up in faith that by simply hearing this news, Jesus would pack up and head their way. I mean, it makes sense, right? Up to this point, every time Jesus has heard that someone is sick or has needed Him, He has immediately stopped what He is doing to help them. Surely He would do the same for His friend. Surely.
You know, it actually says in John chapter 11, verses 5 to 6, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when He heard that he, Lazarus, was sick, He stayed 2 more days in the place where he was.
Whoa. Hold on. Time out. All right, let me take a look at this because I feel like maybe I misheard that. So Jesus loves Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Check.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus hears Lazarus is sick.
Yep.
Check.
Mhm.
Jesus immediately rushed to his friend's side to save him like he has done for so many others.
No.
No. Oh, okay.
No.
So a swing and a miss on that one.
Yep.
No, instead, he stays right where he was for 2 more days. It doesn't even bother saying what he is doing for those 2 days. He just stays. He just waits.
Yep.
And by the time Jesus arrives in Bethany, where Lazarus was located, Lazarus is quite predictably dead. Very dead.
Very, very dead. Yep.
The kind of dead that people don't come back from. Mary and Martha both know this as Mary cries out to the seemingly late Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Let's take a moment to be honest with ourselves here. How many times do we have that if only attitude? I know I have. If only I hadn't made that mistake. If only I had said or done the right thing when it mattered. If only God had answered my prayer before it was too late. But while Jesus was truly saddened and emotionally impacted by this entire circumstance, his determination was unmoved. God wasn't here to do the same old thing. He was here to do an entirely new thing. Their prayers had been heard, and they were about to be answered, just not the way they had imagined, not the way they had wanted. They wanted the healing. They received death and burial instead. They wanted urgency, but what they got was a seemingly unnecessary delay. They wanted Jesus there when they wanted him. They didn't understand the difference between what they wanted and what they needed. Now, if you're not sure what happens next, this is your final spoiler alert. Jesus commands the stone in front of the tomb to be rolled away, and he calls Lazarus back from the grave 4 days after Lazarus had been laid to rest. This was no mere healing or a resuscitation. This was possibly the most dramatic display of power ever demonstrated in the entirety of Christ's earthly ministry to this point. Sure, Jesus had healed blindness. He had miraculously made thousands of fish fillet sandwiches in the desert, and he had even performed other resurrections, but never after decomposition had started. This was a completely dead and decaying dream being brought back to life in an incredibly disruptive way, to the shock of all who witnessed it.
I think that we're all often guilty of giving God a hand by letting him know the best way to solve our problems. Having seen his previous work in my life, it would be most comfortable for me if he would have just delivered the answer in a nice, predictable manner at least 10 minutes prior to the deadline. But God is not interested in a remastered, remade, or safe and predictable sequel to our prayers. He just isn't. He is all about shocking the system. And while God himself never changes, we find that his methods of communication are always unique and personalized. You know, whether it be a burning bush in Exodus, a mighty thunder in Job, or whisper in the wind in 1 Kings, he enjoys working in mysterious ways both then and now.
The reality is we cannot put God or his plans into our neat little box, no matter how hard we try. His answers to prayer are meant to challenge us and our faith so we can move past our preconceived notions of what he has previously done and realize there is so much more he wants to do. Not a rehash or a repeat of your previous successes and failures, but something new, something fresh. It may seem to appear too late, at least by our measurements of time. It may even seem to be uncaring or unsympathetic on the surface, like Jesus' late arrival to his friend's funeral. But it is because his ways are not our ways that his answer will, in due time, show that they are both beyond our wildest dreams and better than we ever could have imagined. So if you're stuck in this limbo, that 2-day period between when you told Jesus you needed him and when he actually shows up, or if he shows up and the opportunity has already passed and you feel like it's already too late, I just want to encourage you to reflect on what Jesus did here as the story records at the end that Jesus calls forth to Lazarus, "Come out of that tomb." And Lazarus comes back to life in a miraculous way that no one would have expected. No one would have anticipated. Jesus did a miracle unlike any he had ever done before. So if you're there, I just want this to encourage you. The answer is coming, and it won't be what you expect. It'll likely be much better, bigger, and different than you would have ever expected. So continue to pray and continue to have faith, because he will get there on his time.